everyone. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Welcome to our quarterly commission night out here in the 2nd Ward. As we get started today, I'm going to ask you to join me for a moment of silence before we move to the Pledge of Allegiance. And then I'll give you a little information in case this is your first time joining us for a City Commission meeting. So if you please join me in rising for a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next, we will move to roll call.
Commissioner Jones?
Here.
Commissioner Kelly?
Here.
I'll take care of 2nd Ward first.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Ruppart?
Here.
Commissioner Lanier? Commissioner O'Connor? Mayor Bliss.
Here. And Commissioners, can I get a motion to excuse Commissioner Moody? Support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, so before we move forward with the agenda, I would like to welcome Mr. Dale Berry from Grand Rapids Public Schools to give us a few words of welcome. We are in their space and we really appreciate that. And so you can just come right up here if you want to the podium. Looks like you have a little sidekick there. Lovely, we love it. We love that. It's fun being out in the community. Thank you, Officer Berry. All right, so we'll get started momentarily with the first opportunity for public comment, but let me walk you through the agenda in case this is your first time joining us for a City Commission meeting. So if you have the agenda in front of you, you will see a number of items on it, and the first thing I want to pull your attention to are the meeting procedures and expectations for meetings. And I specifically want to point out that because this is a public meeting, we want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable and safe speaking, and that regardless of whether we agree with their opinion or not, they feel like they have a chance to be heard by this body. And so I want to make sure you have an opportunity to read that. There are a couple rules during public comment. We give you up to 3 minutes to speak. We ask that you share your name, the city that you live in, and I'll explain the different opportunities for public comment tonight, but then a few other things. During these meetings, we don't allow clapping or cheering or holding up of any signs. We also ask you to refrain from swearing, cursing, name calling, making any derogatory comments specifically directed towards someone's race, religion, or nation of origin. So we really want to hold true to that, and if by chance somebody does violate that, I will ask them to stop, and then I will actually cut their time off from public comment. So there's a couple opportunities for public comment tonight. The very first one is public comment on something that we're voting on. So earlier today, we had a number of City Commission meetings this morning back at City Hall, and we talked about and voted on a number of issues. You'll see all of those listed. So the first opportunity for public comment is if you're here to speak about something that we're going to vote on tonight. So that is something that is on the agenda. Then we have a couple scheduled public hearings. So if you are here tonight to speak about the ordinance and the code change around dance halls or some people indoor events, I will open up that public about the the Obsolete Property Rehabilitation District and the project going on over at 1032 and 1040 Franklin Street Southeast. That's another scheduled public hearing, and I will open that up a little bit later. So if you're here to speak on that, I'm going to ask you to sit tight until I open up that public comment, and then at the end of the meeting, you can speak about anything that is not on the agenda or not a scheduled public hearing. So with that, I will open up our first opportunity for public comment. And again, this is if you are here to speak about something that we are voting on tonight. And the only difference about this public comment is that we ask that you specifically say what item you are referring to. So you can say Appointments Committee number 2, Committee of the Whole number 3, but just let us know what you're here referring to. So I'm going to open up that first opportunity for public comment. You can come up here to the podium, and again, our city clerk will keep track of time as well, and you can see that right up here on this. All right, anyone here to speak about something we're voting on? Going once, going twice. Oh, come on up. So if you want to speak, you can come up and you can just stand in line just so we know how many people. If I don't see anyone standing, I'll go ahead and close that public comment period.
This line's on New Hours, it's not a city chapter. If you're well organized enough, you could use the number system. Like see, so you double check my numbers. There's 99. This will be based on numbers. It should be for senior citizens and veterans and pregnant ladies to stand in line. This is a new wrinkle. Another fascist wrinkle you've put in here, and it's just appalling. Mayor Logie, for example, never pulled this. The U.S. flag before you is not a formal filing of our Happy U.S. Flag Day, and the 14th. The 14th is also the 15th anniversary of the appalling Central Station, where our neighborhood bus routes were banned. Coming by here, your Slave Ship 15 does not go downtown, running Leonard
Mr. Miller,
west.
what number are you referring to? What item?
5, 13, 14, public comment. People can't get here. The other lines to Skyjack 7, America's dumbest bum route, orbiting downtown Freeway 131, kindly throughout it north from Fulton via Mont Monroe corridor. The Slave Ship 15 has 2 pop-up high schools, okay? We need double-deckers in this town, and could build them outside Flint. Intolerable, inhumane abuse on the Slave Ship 15. Next, police bear in my neighborhood that's recently 6 weeks running around. If he had Captain Vanderkoy on the job, you know, he could have gone after it. 6 weeks, that's ridiculous. DNR dude says, well, it's passing through it. Sorry, stuck around 6 weeks, and I was personally threatened by it, just trying to get over to Sunday bus walking through a thicket behind Hartwell's Pilgrim Manor. 7.3 cannabis is an abomination for low-income people. We can't have this in our condos and apartments with common vents. Next, 8.1, $15 million. You're overpaying the cops by 40% more than you need to, as I go into a little bit on the bottom. All that drama came before you. It was well-timed to do it right as the cop budget was coming before you. 79 million pop with the courts. You're paying to bring in many more officers if you roll that down. 9A4 is he a veteran or citizen? Next, why are we funding you to go to Columbia, South Carolina? We got no report on all the cool trips you've made around the country.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Your time is up. Thanks. All right, others who wish to be heard? Hi, welcome.
A little different from the last meeting, right? That I was at. Got shut down. My name's Teresa. I'm here to talk about the ordinance that you guys are going to be adopting or voting on adopting. I'm not sure. I'm just going to read what I have written here. So, hi there, I'm Teresa. I'm a precinct delegate here in Grand Rapids. I'm here to talk about the small cell ordinance you're voting on today, as are others. With no local power, these telecommunications companies can put their small cell antennas wherever they wish, no matter how close to homes the utility poles are. The only...
Oh, can you just repeat your name, please, Teresa?
I'm Teresa. I'm not with a group. The only safety studies showing there are no dangers are the ones done by the industry itself. There are thousands of independent studies proving this to be a dangerous technology and over 250 doctors and scientists asking for a moratorium on this rollout. I know you guys have delayed this for as long as you can, and I urge you to continue to resist this. I feel that your reasons for delaying may be more financially driven, but I would ask that you also consider the health effects on your city's populace as well as for you and your families. This is an assault on humanity. One point that I want to bring up specifically to Mayor Bliss is the trees. I know that Mayor Bliss has been working to increase our tree canopy. Thousands of trees in the UK have been cut down and thousands more are slated to be destroyed, supposedly because they are diseased, dying, or dead, but not according to the residents who live there. Perfectly healthy, mature trees, 100-year-old trees, are being axed to the ground, and thousands of people believe this is to make way for 5G because the limbs and leaves block the signal. People are chaining their cars to trees, standing guard on the trees in front of their homes in order to keep them from being chopped down. Why is this important to us here? Because one of the greatest things about this city is the abundance of green, the mature, beautiful trees that help cool our homes, shade our sidewalks, clean the air, and provide oxygen. They catch the storm runoff and help filter out pollutants before they hit our waterways. I know Mayor Bliss loves her trees and has planted hundreds of trees so far in an effort to get us to that 40% canopy coverage. But what will happen when small cell antennas are installed and the trees are blocking the signal? Will we allow thousands of trees to be destroyed because we want to download a movie instantly and drive our driverless cars? In addition to the tree devastation are the effects on birds and insects, specifically bees. I'm going to get a little sciencey on you. But all plants and animals, as well as humans, have adapted to the Earth's electromagnetic fields and low-frequency Schumann resonances, or Earth's frequency. To navigate in relation to these fields and to control their immune systems, birds and bees are magnetically sensitive, use magnetically sensitive substances called cryptochromes. These are protein pigments found in virtually all animals, plants, and many bacteria. Cryptochromes measure light to control and reset animals' and plants' biological clocks. Some animals also use cryptochromes to sense or see the direction of the Earth's magnetic field. Cryptochromes are badly impaired by human-made oscillating electromagnetic fields, disrupting insects and animals' solar...
I'm sorry, your time is up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just have like one little...
I'm sorry,
Okay.
but we do have your correspondence that you sent us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, welcome.
My name's Maya Hahn, and I have a child that attends Kent County, and I'm here to talk about 5G. I have grave concerns about how the FCC has taken the power away from you, from the state and our local officials in regards to the implementation of 5G within our communities. No longer do we have a voice to say no to community exposure of microwave radiation. This is truly unconscionable and a complete overreach of the CCC, and I ask you all to fight back. The people in this community need you to stand up and with us and demand we take back control of our state. The dangers of microwave radiation is real and substantial, and the CCC is not doing its job for protecting our community. In California, all fighter fighters have now been allowed an exemption from being exposed to cell tower radiation at their fire stations after it was found that they had developed significant neurological impairments confirmed through SPEC brain scans. Such symptoms included headaches, extreme fatigue, cognitive impairment, anesthesia-like sleep, inability to sleep, unexplained anger, depression, anxiety. There were firefighters who got lost on several occasions while on a 911 call in a town that they had grown up in. In one instance, 4 firefighters sat in their rig in a stupor with the alarm sounding in the background, unable to remember how to start their engine. A medic with 20 years of experience who had never made a mistake forgot basic CPR in the midst of resuscitating a coronary victim. The brain scans of these 6 men revealed a pervasive excitability of the neurons, which suggested that the exposure to these microwave radiation was causing the neurons to continually fire without benefit of rest. When neurons, these are brain cells, cannot rest, they ultimately die. Now, pervasive infertility is plaguing these firefighters, and there is one station that has 4 cases of cancer. The most important lesson of these firefighters to us as a community is if we allow a build-out of cell towers in front of homes, schools, and hospitals, such as these fire stations, we will be facing a tsunami of learning disabilities, Alzheimer's, and dementia in our community and in our population. The fire station cell towers in these cases measured 1/1000 to 2/1000 of the allowable FCC limit of non-ionizing radiation. That means the towers could be almost 1,000 times more powerful than the level the firefighters were exposed to and still be considered within the FCC guidelines. We have to hold FCC accountable. We must work with our state and local legislators to gain back our community control so we can stop this unnecessary radiation from contaminating and injuring our community and our citizens. There was a time when we had high-tension power lines built over homes and playgrounds.
Thank you, Maya. Your time's up. Thank you.
Please, do the right thing. Fight back.
Thank you. Right, others who wish to be heard?
My name is Sarah Berry. I live in Kentwood, and I'm a part-time realtor. My husband also works in the city of Grand Rapids. I have a question. I did leave my email address for questions or concerns to be contacted. My question to you is, I know we have until June 9. By the way, I'm speaking in opposition, of course, to the adoption of the ordinance on small cell towers. My question to you is, we have until June 9 to adopt the state legislature, and I would advise that you vote no tonight and take that time to maybe do more research and see if there's some loophole in the law. I don't know. There's got to be something out there that says if the health of our citizens is at risk, that we do not have to follow some state law that was passed. I mean, could it not be upheld? I just urge you to maybe take that extra time to just do more research. So there are 25 states right now that have mandated streamlining of the 5G deployment infrastructure. The FCC, as you probably know by now, adopted those regulations that limited the authorities of state and local governments. These regulations restrict cities from operating how they wish to operate. I mean, basically, this is going to cost the city of Grand Rapids a lot of money, because all of the funds that are used for the application process, they're not going to be enough to pay for the additional employment that is needed to cover, all those expenses. We're basically going to be eating the cost for these big tech companies who make millions of dollars. We're going to be eating that cost. The citizens are going to be eating it. And is there really any benefit? Again, I think Teresa mentioned, just so that we can download a movie faster or have these automated vehicles driving around. Nobody's going to be able to afford an automated vehicle for decades. I mean, we have poverty that needs to be addressed. We have so many other things that money needs to go to, not this. The FCC, a long time ago, they proposed limits on the electromagnetic magnitude or field. Those limits are way outdated. They need to be updated. They did not take into consideration the effects on neurological damage. They only took into consideration any damage, the injuries caused from the actual heat of the electromagnetic fields, not the actual oscillation of the cells being vibrated. So a couple things that we can do. We need to vote no on HR 7236, which has been proposed to actually limit liability of these tech companies. We need to hold them responsible. We need to hold them liable. And I urge you to contact your congressman, your congress members, to do that. And we need to pass HR 530, which has been introduced. And I think we need to undo what the FCC has done. And we also need to repeal SB 637 in the state of Michigan, which took away more power from you in addition to the FCC. So please use the time to think about it and wait until June 9th to make a decision.
Thank you, Ms. Berry.
Thank you.
Thanks. Hi, welcome.
Hello, thank you very much. I'm Dr. David Urban, and I live in Grand Rapids Township, lived in Grand Rapids proper for many years, and I do work in Grand Rapids. I want to be speaking regarding what the previous speakers said regarding the 5G legislation, and I just wanted to point out a few things. First of all, there is precedent for cities to push back. There's precedent for cities to push back. Palm Beach in Florida pushed back against such requirements, and they're pushing back. Their fight has been respected by the governor there. Small cities throughout California, Ohio, have pushed back. And so I just want to make that point that what we're asking you to do is not unprecedented. It's not some kind of great violation of the peace within the state or within the country. And so I think that I'd encourage you, like the other speakers were saying, to consider that this is a very new technology, an untested technology that is not urgent. It's not urgent now for us to suddenly, and then later on, feel the deleterious effects. Why not wait? Why not wait for better studies, more thorough studies, studies that aren't simply sponsored by the companies that will be directly profiting from this technology. If I may also just like to speak a little bit from the Constitution and its amendments. Obviously, the preamble of the Constitution speaks of the purpose of the country coming together is to provide for, among other things, the general tranquility. I don't think that's helped by what's going on here. But more basically, let's remember that this is this FCC executive, it's a kind of executive overreach that I think is in violation of the 9th and 10th Amendments. The 9th Amendment reads that the enumeration of the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. And the 10th Amendment...
Sir, can you just back up a little bit so we're not getting so much feedback? Thank you.
The 10th Amendment says that the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So the 10th Amendment is not simply states' rights, but rights to the people within the states. So I encourage you to think about the constitutional issues as well as precedent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. These microphones are very sensitive, so I'm going to ask you just to leave a little bit more space, and that way we won't get so much pushback, feedback. Thank you.
How's
Hi.
that?
Perfect.
Is that okay?
Yes,
My
thank
name
you.
is Janine Deal, and I am founder of Michigan for Safe Technology. Many good points have been brought up. I wanted to reiterate Swiss Re, which is one of the world's largest reinsurance companies, will not insure the wireless industry. Would you buy a car that the insurance company said, nope, I'm not going to insure it, there's too much risk there? That's what these small cell towers are. That's what they're going to do. They're going to put high-risk devices in all of our rights of way. Back to the FCC, safety guidelines introduced in 1996. The EPA at that time did not concede with those safety guidelines because they were based on thermal effects. If it burned you, it was not safe. Non-ionizing radiation has proven biological, non-thermal effects. So FCC guidelines really are, we need to throw them out. We need new safety guidelines that protect people. This 5G infrastructure with massive deployment of small cell towers has never been safety tested. U.S. Senator Richard Blumenthal confirmed that with the wireless industry, and he even said, we're kind of flying blind here as far as health and safety goes. Yes. What else do I want to cover? There's been a lot of studies proving biological effects. How do you cover decades of corruption and cover-up in 3 minutes? It's pretty impossible. But yes, there's several states that are introducing legislation. Actually, Massachusetts has 19 bills in the works right now, and they are moving, that are going to protect the people from wireless radiation. This is an Electro Smog meter, and it will show you levels of wireless radiation. Okay, so right now we're in the red zone. That means that it's dangerous. You would not want to sleep or live or even work in an area in the red zone because the National Toxicology Program confirmed wireless radiation has clear carcinogenic effects. Wireless radiation has already been rated a class 2B carcinogen. Now, Cancer researcher Anthony Miller believes we have enough evidence to upgrade it to a class 1 carcinogen. I've talked to attorneys, more than one, who say, yeah, wireless is the next tobacco. You are sitting in a time of dramatic change. Please do your due diligence. Look into all the studies I sent you and make wise decisions to protect the health of the people of Michigan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, others who wish to be heard? Hi, welcome.
My name is Pat Sizek. I'm here to ask for more police officers. If this gentleman does not want them in his area, please send them by my area. I would love to
Ma'am,
see them.
what item that we're voting on tonight are you
I don't
referring
know.
to?
He mentioned it.
I
and
know, he
just-
mentioned quite a few things, but is
Yeah.
there an item that you
Yes, I'd
are
like
referring to?
know about why we're having our chiefs that are interested in being our police chief.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
please, why are we having it at the Chavez School instead of here? I would feel a whole lot more comfortable coming here. I do not know that area,
that's not on our agenda tonight, so if you,
but this is something I want to bring.
Yep.
It's Thursday, and so I would like very much to consider moving it where we can. all-
okay, thank you. Hi, welcome.
My name's Adrienne. I'm Adrienne Urban. I am the wife of the gentleman who spoke from, who's works in Grand Rapids and lived in Grand Rapids for many years. We've lived here about 15 years. I just wanted to echo, I am not as well versed in the 5G technology. I've learned a lot, as well as I assume many of you have tonight, learning from these people who've spoken previously, but I am very concerned. I've been looking at different forms of radiation for a long time. We all know that we have to be careful about x-rays. We all hopefully are learning that we want to maybe put a guard over our thyroid when we go to get an x-ray. When you go into the dentist's office, they will say, oh, they're not so bad. It's like being in an airplane, less than an airplane. Well, what is this 5G? What is it? Do we know? It sounds to me, and from what I've read, that we don't know. There's a really interesting article in Newsweek from just this March talking about 4 children getting cancer within the last 3 years. Autoimmune disease, all these things, we know they are rising, but they've got cell towers on this school. You might want to look at the article and see what's in there. It's very interesting. They brought an electromagnetic specialist in to decide what's going on in the school, what's going on with these diseases. This person is saying this is not safe. I think that it seems to me from what I'm hearing, and I don't know if this is what you're feeling, is that this 5G is, you see the commercials and they're saying it's going to be faster, it's going to be more convenient. How many things do we need to subject ourselves to, however, for convenience? When you think about something like fast food, we all know it's not a good idea. Some of us indulge sometimes, but it's not a good idea to have it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And in the case of 5G, I can choose whether or not I want to have fast food. I can choose whether or not my kids are going to have fast food. In this case, we don't get to choose. These are going to be put everywhere, going into our homes, where our kids are sleeping, where we're sleeping. One thing that's brought to mind, I don't know if any of you saw the Ai Weiwei exhibit at Meyer Gardens. It was about 2 years ago, I believe. He was an artist out of China. One of the displays he had was rebar. And for the sake of convenience, people over there, architects, built a big building that was to house children without the appropriate structural specifications. There was an earthquake, the building fell, tons and tons of children died. He protested the lack of oversight for the buildings, that people were not looking for the safety of the children, but just for convenience and saving money. So in the same vein, I'm asking that we would all think, you all, citizens, every one of us think, convenience isn't always a good thing. It may be a good thing, but we have to look at the risks involved and not have the blood of children, blood of other citizens on our hands, and realize down the road, what have we done to ourselves, to our environment, to our children, to ourselves? How many of us will end up with cancer possibly from something like this unwittingly, not realizing what it was all about? I personally don't think it's worth it, and I really don't like that the telecom communications are not held responsible. I don't want to buy anything or participate in anything where the person making it is not responsible. None of you would buy a house like that. No one would buy
Thank you.
I'm done.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right, anyone else who wishes to be heard on items we're voting on tonight? Hi, welcome.
My name is Rane Alexander, and it's about the small cell tower. I just thought of something while I was sitting there that hasn't been brought up. A couple of weeks ago on C-SPAN, the Department of Defense was before Congress explaining about the lack of security with 5G and how easily it's hacked. So far, only China and Russia have the technology in order to keep cyber hacking from happening. So they said this was going to be a form of cyber terrorism that we're going to be opened up to in the United States. So that's another thing to think about. It just happened in Genesee County where their systems were hacked at the city level and the county level, where they had ransomware put in there. And they talked about that in the congressional hearings. So I would recommend that you go back from 2 weeks ago and look at those hearings and see what they said about the cybersecurity and how we don't have that technology yet in the United States, or even any of our allies don't have that technology to protect our information. Because even at your level, if at the city level, the police station could be hacked. There's different forms of ID that they were concerned about that could be hacked, especially employee records. And also, medical records could be hacked. So there was a lot of things that the Department of Defense was bringing in, which I'd ask that you consider that as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Alexander. Anyone else who wishes to be heard? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close that opportunity for public comment, and we're going to move forward with approval of our minutes, and these are the minutes from our last meeting together. Can I get a motion? All right, commissioners, any questions or comments? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, next that will take us to petitions and communications.
The first one is a communication received from Sandra Rempel regarding the Grand Rapids Police Department.
That's received and filed.
Communication from Paula Mendeville regarding the resignation from the Board of Zoning Appeals.
That's referred to Committee on Appointments.
Communication received from West Michigan Cannabis Guild expressing concerns regarding the medical marijuana facility applicants.
That's received and filed.
Communication from Levi Gardner regarding their resignation from the Urban Agricultural Committee.
That's received and filed.
Communication received from the Grand Rapids Democracy Initiative Ward Redistricting Committee regarding a ward redistricting proposal.
That's received and filed.
And 11 communications received expressing opposition to the proposed small cell wireless ordinance.
And that is also received and filed. All right, next that will take us to reports of city officers.
First one is the Comptroller's report for the period of May 9, 2019 through May 22, 2019 in the amount of $15,100,799.02.
That's received and filed.
Second one is a Treasurer's report for the period of May 4, 2019 through May 17, 2019.
That's received and filed.
And from the city clerk submitted copies of the police and fire retirement system actuarial valuation for the year ending December 31, 2018.
That's received and filed, but I'll echo what I requested this morning, and that is that presentation be given to the fiscal committee. So I'll trust that that will be followed up on. All right, commissioners, next that will take us to our consent agenda and reports of standing committees. So these are items that we talked about earlier today in one of our meetings, and when we voted on them, they were voted on unanimously. So tonight, with one voice vote, those items will be adopted. Commissioners, can I get a motion for the consent agenda?
Support.
All right, any questions or comments? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, and we have no items removed, so that will quickly take us to ordinances to be adopted. And we have adoption of ordinance regarding small cell wireless facilities in the public rights of way. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Moved, is there support?
Support.
And support. So Commissioner O'Connor, you want to tell us about this?
Yeah, I mean, sure, I guess. It's just given to me to read here. I just haven't had a lot of time to understand all this, so.
And we may have Mr. Eric DeLong potentially come up and answer some questions.
So this ordinance is to promote the expansion of 5G co-location across the nation. The FCC issued order number 133 on January 12, 2019, which limits municipal control of the right-of-way as it pertains to wireless service providers. Michigan then enacted 2018 Public Act 365 on March 12, 2019, which provides even more restrictive, uniform statewide measures to encourage 5G development in Michigan. The city has 90 days from the Act's effective date to conform to the requirements of the statute. Accordingly, the city has until June 9, 2019 to implement the necessary changes to the fees and procedures. The ordinance establishes the series of fees and requirements and further provides that those fees may be adjusted by resolution in the future, all as permitted by the Act. The ordinance further states that a preference for a type of installation that respects the right-of-way as the default design unless there are extenuating circumstances. The ordinance complies with the procedures and fees required by the FCC and state law and is also consistent with a model ordinance drafted by the Grand Valley Metro Council.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. So I know those of us around this table know this, but if you're in the audience and you're not familiar with this, we, as a body and myself included, we actually actively opposed the FCC changes and the state legislation. And it was passed, and as some of you indicated, municipalities are being expected to comply. So I'm going to ask Mr. Eric DeLong to come forward and give my colleagues up here an opportunity to ask questions. Probably the first question that I think probably needs to be answered is, if we don't support this ordinance change, what are the consequences for us?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank everybody who came and spoke to us today and has spoken through the process of adopting these rules, both at the state and local and federal level. We need to proceed. This ordinance is proposed to proceed so we can conform with state law and continue to exercise the limited ability to regulate location and placement of these facilities within our right-of-way. That would be the limited amount that's been preserved of our discretion through the adoption of both the FCC regulations and the state law. So, absent this, we will be in violation of the state act if we don't adopt or do something to conform with the regulations. And we will also lose that ability to regulate our right-of-way. So companies may decide that, well, we don't have to pay the fees that are available. Our fee structure that is currently in place, which is different than the fee structure that would be under this ordinance, we would probably be challenged on our fees. And so it would limit the already very limited ability we have to regulate this industry.
All right, commissioners, questions? Commissioner Lanier?
Yeah, I know I'm on, but I'm not on. There we go. Thanks, Eric, for that overview. We talked about this a little bit in Community Development Committee a couple weeks ago when we set the date for this to be heard and the ordinance to be adopted. So one of the concerns that we talked about during that committee meeting was that we don't know enough, and I think those were the same concerns that we heard from the public earlier. And so if we, I don't know what the solution is, but I do feel like, I can recall when we were removing the law about spitting on the sidewalk from the books. And we had a lot of discussions about what did that mean if we allowed people to spit on the sidewalks for our health. And that's spit in one location that's kind of limited. But, and so we talked to the health department, we talked to, other institutions to kind of get more background information as we were considering that ordinance or that change. And so I just feel like we need to do our due diligence, and this isn't new. We talked about it in CD, but if is a moratorium in order? Is what other options do we have so that we can do our due diligence in our community to make sure that we're all safe? And I'm not looking for the state to get upset with Grand Rapids and potentially have negative consequences for our actions, but sometimes you do have to take a stand for something that may have negative consequences if you look at them on the surface, but the long-term outcome could be to the benefit of the community. And so, sometimes you just have to take a stand. And so if this is one of those things, especially if we're unaware of the consequences for 5G, I think we have to do something as a body.
So we pursued that vigorously during the process of the adoption of the state law, and we complained bitterly. We lobbied hard. We did everything we knew how to do. And the communications lobby was stronger than the municipal lobby.
Sure.
And in this case, they won. So our ability to make a difference, I think, is limited, unfortunately. And I understand exactly what you're saying and why you're saying it. And I'm not happy to be here representing this item. So, to be honest, but we do have I think where I come down on it is to preserve the little bit of control we have is better than and maybe live to fight another day or continue fighting is probably better than issuing a moratorium, because I think a moratorium would probably do more damage to us in terms of being able to regulate our right-of-ways.
How so?
Well, I think if we chose not to conform to state law, we have contracts that will continue with 4 providers that may be affected. They give us a little more control than we have now, that we would have under state law. So we would lose probably that privilege, or they would sue us to vacate those contracts. I believe we would be challenged on our ability to regulate if we don't have rules that conform with the state law. So I think we're in a difficult position, Commissioner, where it just is a difficult position. I also have Mr. Thibodeau here, who is an attorney from Foster Swift and Collins, who has represented us on this matter and helped us draft this. And he can join me and help me if he would. And buttress my argument if you can. So come on, Mr. Thibodeau.
Thank
Join
you.
the party.
And we appreciate you being here and the work that you've done in partnership with us and I know other municipalities on this issue. I know Commissioner Kelly had her hand up for a question, and then I think maybe going back to what are the legal ramifications if we don't comply with this 90-day window that the state gave municipalities to comply. So, Commissioner Kelly?
Well, that actually was my question, was what are the legal ramifications if we don't comply? Because I think all of us around this table are concerned, as you are too, Mr. DeLong. So, I did meet with a constituent last week with similar concerns, and I read up in the time that I had to read up on this. I do understand that in Europe there are some safety precautions, that there actually are some quite costly protections that you can put around these, but again, who's going to pay for those, and that they're not in place now. I also understand that we are an instrument of the state. We serve at the will of the state. This is not nearly as serious as the fireworks ordinance, but over time we were forced to pass an ordinance that we were not happy with that allowed for consumer fireworks. We are now tonight going to, fortunately, at least reduce the amount of exposure we had to that, but this seems much more risky. We just don't know what the risks are. I mean, I think about my granddaughters, my grandsons, and all the children that you've mentioned. So I really do have some concerns, and that is my main question is, what is that going to do to us in terms of, it sounds like contract obligations are one concern. I would encourage everyone in here with their concerns to be writing their congresspersons in Washington and at the state level, because quite honestly, I have concerns about the FCC in other areas as well. And I think that we have an obligation at least to fight this and to engage MML in terms of imposing this on us without our feeling secure in the safety.
Thank you, and thanks for having me in on all of the comments today, especially those from the Commission. Act 365 and FCC Order 18133 are intentional efforts to limit municipalities from engaging in exactly the type of pushback that we're talking about here today. Michigan's Act 365 specifically and expressly prohibits a moratorium on 5G technology, particularly the co-location. They've done that specifically to anticipate what the commissions all over the state of Michigan and the FCC, obviously all over the United States, are likely to do in order to kind of restrict wireless companies from coming into their rights of way. To answer your question, Commissioner Kelly, the legal ramifications are precisely what Mr. DeLong has described. It would affect our contract issues, but I think the beginning of what Mr. DeLong was saying is the more important piece of this, and that would be that we have considerable contractual obligations because of the express language of Act 365. We would be kind of in direct violation of state law. They've anticipated many of the arguments in the language of the Act and have structured the language of the Act to be such that you have really no recourse. Although I agree that that is perhaps unfortunate, I think it is, something that does need to be fought at both the state and federal level, perhaps, not at the local level. I think, legally speaking, in terms of ramifications, the contractual obligations could be affected, but again, far more importantly are the contractual obligations that might be affected by not complying with state law.
Can one of you elaborate just so that commissioners can have a good idea on maybe an example of if we support this?
Using stealth provisions, how far away they can. Not passing any law and kind of letting it kind of go would produce a situation in which wireless providers would inevitably sue the city and potentially get a result that would be less favorable than we're already dealing with. The way that we've drafted this ordinance is to give us the absolute most protection that we can possibly have with the Act as it's written. We've intentionally done that to give Grand Rapids as much control as you guys possibly could have with the limitations that have been imposed upon you.
In layman's terms, I'm sorry, I didn't fully understand that. So clarification then, if we didn't, they could actually sue us and potentially put up even more wireless small cell and in locations that we didn't want it.
So I propose what I'm saying. I suppose what I'm saying is that right now we have limitations that we have imposed that we feel are reasonable and fit squarely within the limitations of the Act. A lawsuit could potentially result in a situation where wireless providers are petitioning for specific co-locations in specific places, and that could conflict with the limitations that we've imposed by this ordinance. Therefore, it would be, as you said, in a worse position than we currently are.
But when you say petition for, who would they petition?
Legally, in court, they bring a claim asking to, allow wireless co-locations on X, Y, and Z block throughout the city, and a court under the Act could theoretically allow that. I suppose the ordinance as we've written it would encourage compliance with the ordinance and the spacing requirements that we've included inside the ordinance.
So going back to Commissioner Lanier's, just for layman's terms. So we have guidelines and restrictions based on where these can be placed, and there's a permitting process and a fee, which now the state is imposing the fee. But if we do nothing, then potentially these providers could come in and have free reign in our right-of-way, and we wouldn't be able to deny them the ability to co-locate or to locate closer than we want them to, or to be a certain type of small cell versus the ground mount versus the aerial mount. We wouldn't have any say. So you're saying we've tried to build in opportunity for us to be as restrictive as possible under the law that has been passed. If we do nothing, then all of those opportunities for us to provide any type of restrictions potentially could go away.
Would all be subject to litigation, correct?
That's what's before us. Similar, I think Commissioner Kelly's example of the fireworks ordinance is a good one. That law was passed at the state, we had to do something or else it would have been allowed.
Madam Mayor, just go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, so the fireworks example is a good example. So remember our history from this morning. I think the original fireworks license ordinance or law was passed in 2011. And so it took until now for people to wake up and change the rules and give us the opportunity to have a more reasonable regulatory framework for fireworks. And I think the same kind of thing could happen here where this is an overreach in terms of regulatory authority, I believe. So the state's gone pretty far, FCC's gone pretty far. Those things can't even out if there's enough pressure over time, just like with fireworks. And so I think it's, to Commissioner Kelly's point, it's incumbent upon everyone who is concerned about this to keep fighting and try to get the law, keep the fight up until people wake up and have some more reasonable regulation perhaps.
So I have another question. If we were to pass this, would we also be able to impose some safety requirements that I know that have happened in other countries around this in order to put some protection, some shielding up? That's probably already been discussed.
Yes, that has been discussed. Part of Act 365, the language that it uses is that a municipality cannot impose anything that is technically non-feasible or technologically, this isn't a direct quote, but hindering to the wireless technology. And so what that gives rise to is kind of a gray area in which the wireless companies then have the ability to argue, this whatever restriction you impose is somehow technologically non-feasible for our particular type of small cell requirement. So to the extent that we are able, to the extent that the Act provides any sort of gray area, we have gone to as much of an extreme as possible to ensure health, safety, and general welfare of the public. So it's been in mind the entire drafting process.
City Manager, did you want to add on? I know you've been actively involved in this as well. We've had, when we were actively and vocally opposing this, we partnered with a number of our other local municipalities, Grand Valley Metro Council, other mayors in other cities. So we've been opposing this for some time before it finally passed last year.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add, in addition to this not being just a Grand Rapids issue or a Michigan issue, this is, as Mr. Thibodeau recognized, this is something that is happening across the country and many other states and cities that because of the need for expansion of innovation and technology, there's deployment of 5G in many other places. And we have seen the preemption of state legislatures across the country. If we do not adopt this tonight, the limited authority that we have to develop our design standards, our parameters for the maximum height of pole and some of the other, the size of some of the other technology will be limited, and it could even be larger equipment that will be installed if we do not do this. We also lose, even though we do not have 100% cost recovery for some of the administrative processing for the permitting application. If we do not adopt this tonight, we won't recover anything in terms of our ability to recover staff fees for some of the staff works that's used to permit this. So it is unfortunately not ideal. We would have liked to have more local control over how, when, and the cost of the installation, but we are unfortunately preempted by state law from doing so. There are health concerns, obviously, that has been raised tonight, and I would also challenge the community and others to think beyond just what we can do legislatively. Let's also think what can we do educationally to create better awareness around things people can do to manage their own health and environmental concerns.
Thanks. Commissioner Kelly?
Yeah. Began to read the this material that was given to me. We had something, I think, in our boxes some time ago, and there was some information from the American Pediatric Association just warning parents that little children shouldn't be holding cell phones with them on. And if you start using a phone before you're 20 and you've used it for several years, kids shouldn't hold it near their reproductive organs. I think at the very least, if we could get some of that information, and even if we have a link to, we realize that all of the studies haven't been done. We don't know everything for sure. But nevertheless, just those words of caution, they're even on our phone. If you go under general and then legal, you will see that there's a warning. The degree of exposure, we don't know. I mean, I think back to when I was a kid and my uncle was a believer that putting fluoride in the water was a communist plot. So I don't want to be like one of those people that is so skeptical that we can't move forward. But on the other hand, we're hearing enough concerns that and obviously we've been fighting for more control over this. So in a sense, I feel like this fight has helped us raise awareness. And we really need to begin to look into that. How we go about doing that, is it this body, along with all the other things that we have that we're taking on at this point? I don't know what the answer is. We're feeling pretty stretched as it is. And we certainly stretched our new city manager. So I would encourage this conversation, to join us in this pushback that we've obviously had with the state and the federal government, and I guess we're going to have to vote on this.
And
be involved in this, I think, and the county. Go to the county commission.
Commissioner Lenny?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So forgive my ignorance. I wasn't on the commission when the Fireworks Act was in place, but I'm not quite understanding how this act will work and force our hands without there being an ordinance in place on our behalf. So someone's going to have to help me to understand that, because without an ordinance in our city, there's no activity on whatever it is that there is in an ordinance. So that's what I know to be true in my role as a city commissioner. So if there's this act that was passed at the state government, how does that then force the hand, without us putting the regs in place locally, how it will then be administered in our city? That's missing for me.
Yeah, so Eric, maybe you can elaborate. Basically, it preempts us from regulating, and so individuals like in communities who don't have an ordinance, they will operate under state law, and they will go in and they'll be able to do basically whatever they want in the right of way.
So all of the specific language in the act will then become what our city is governed under. Anyone who's interested in working with this particular body of work would use the state's act as its guide, as opposed to a local ordinance. That's what I'm understanding?
Right.
Correct. So similar to the conversation with fireworks, the state legalized them, and they said, and if we wouldn't have passed an ordinance saying you can only use them these 30 days, then people would have been able to use them any day without restriction, and we would have no ability to enforce. We would have had to comply with the state law that was passed.
So then the secondary question, and forgive me, sir, I'm forgetting your name, but you were at the meeting when we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but I'm wondering then, the comment that you made earlier about we went as far as we thought we could, when Commissioner Kelly asked the question about, adding provisions to the ordinance that would allow those cellular providers to be then responsible for having whatever the buffer is. You said it was gray, you said we went as far as we could. Why not add to our ordinance the specific thing that we want, which is for them to cover that, and then let the state or let the courts determine if we've gone too far? Because at least that provides some level of protection if we're requiring,
Right now, we're just saying the bully is here, our back is up against the wall, we have to do something, and this is the best we can do. How about we just take one swing, the best swing we possibly can, and say, in addition to this, bully, you're gonna at least pay my medical bills if you hit me. Something.
I appreciate that argument. I think that that's another area in which the Act has kind of anticipated what your argument is going to be. They've imposed different requirements for the application process for wireless providers, and specific reasons why applications can be denied, and also specific things that can be restricted by a municipality. One of those things is not necessarily accountability for the health effects, but let me back up, I'm sorry. There are 9 specific reasons why an application can be denied. None of those 9 things are health reasons or health effects or potential health outcomes, even after they've been realized. To the extent that your argument is that we should simply fight it, perhaps that's valid, and that would be for the commission to decide. However, that would not be my recommendation, because it would be directly flying in the face of state law, which would preempt local law.
So I'm saying not fight, take a swing, and the swing would be to cause the cellular providers to then pay for there to be protections around wherever they place the small cells. That to me is different than fighting the whole thing. I think those are 2 different fights.
Certainly, and perhaps I should have been a little bit more clear. One of the 9 things is the costs that can be imposed on a wireless provider. It is fairly specific that the costs that are detailed within the Act are the only costs that can be imposed upon them. However, certainly, that is a gray area in the sense that if the city were to argue that, health effects were, somehow different than the fees charged by the city, perhaps that would be an argument. However, from a legal perspective, I wouldn't say it'd be a very good one, unfortunately.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yep. Wondering what the state law allows in terms of negotiations with the industry in exchange for the use of the right-of-way.
It's essentially a preemptive statute, so they consider that they've done all the negotiating at the state level.
So
we're done.
So essentially they've negotiated on our behalf already.
Absolutely, pretty much.
Right, and so we don't have the power to negotiate with the providers at all in terms of their use of our right-of-way.
We have limited ability. Go ahead. No.
I was just going to say that the fees detailed within the Act, from the state's perspective, are the highest fees that would be allowed. Not necessarily the proposed fees, just the capped fees, which obviously are considerably lower than they were in the past. But it isn't necessarily a situation where they're saying these are exactly the fees that you need to charge. We could certainly charge fees less than that, but what they are saying is that this is the negotiated maximum that we've worked out with the, certainly the wireless lobby, or the communications lobby.
Just one other quick question. What about things like collocation, length of time for siting, terms of installation, terms for upgrade, free or discounted services for schools, libraries, or other public entities, or other provisions that benefit the community and its residents? No go? No? No?
No, it's this language, and this is one of the reasons we were very opposed to it, is it preempts us from making decisions and determinations and regulating the way that we have in the past what goes in our right-of-way. And they've been pushing for this legislation for a long time, for several years, and we have opposed it the entire time, and it passed them, and basically that's what it is. The state is preempting, and if we don't do something, then they'll operate in our city under the state language. Commissioner O'Connor?
Oh, I just want to remind, I think we were negotiating in good faith around some of this stuff, and the industry decided to seek a legislative solution rather than negotiate individually with local units of government, and that we're just negotiating with a gun to our head at this point. So thanks to our friends in the technology sector for providing us this opportunity.
And our state government for not supporting us.
Yeah. Well, I can assure you, we were very vocal.
Absolutely.
And fought it since the day it was proposed. And I know a lot of staff went to Lansing and testified. We collaborated with a lot of other municipalities and partners, and we were just not successful in defeating this legislation at the state level or the federal level. Any final questions before I have our city clerk call the question? All right, this is a roll call vote tonight.
Commissioner Jones.
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier.
No.
Commissioner O'Connor.
No.
Commissioner Repart.
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly.
No.
Mayor Bliss.
Yes.
That is a 3-3 vote. It does not carry.
All right. Next, it will take us to our public hearings. So we have no resolutions before us tonight, so that'll take us to our public hearings. And we'll start with the first one. This is a public hearing on proposed ordinance to repeal and replace Chapter 102 of Title 7 of the Grand Rapids City Code entitled Dance Hall and adopt a new Chapter 102 entitled Indoor Events. Can I get oh, I don't need a motion. It's public hearing. I'm sorry. Sorry. I'm still thinking resolutions. City Clerk, I have your name next to this one. Do you want to tell us about this, and then I'll open it up for public comment?
I believe this came up at committee. Was there a presentation at committee whole when I was gone?
There was a presentation at committee of the whole in your absence.
Good.
Yes.
I don't want to do the whole thing. I don't want to do the whole
You don't have
show again.
no. You don't have to do the whole thing.
Just a reminder for those who weren't here before. So in May 4, 1982, we originally enacted something called public dance in the ordinance. In 2013, it got repealed and was replaced as dance halls. And so this one is going to propose to repeal dance hall, motion picture theater, and live entertainment licenses and replace it as indoor events. So this is for public safety of all non-residential indoor events where gatherings, I believe, of over 50. And Inspector Doctor's here too in case you have questions.
Great, thank you. So if you are here tonight to be heard on this item before us related to the code changes from dance hall to indoor event, now's an opportunity to come forward. Same rules apply. We ask that you share your name, the city that you live in, and we'll give you up to 3 minutes to speak. So if you're here to specifically talk about this ordinance, come forward. All right, seeing none, I'm going to close that public hearing, and that'll take us to our next public hearing. Commissioners, I am going to ask for your support in reading the next 4 public hearings, reading all 4 of them, and then opening them up and having them together since they're related to the exact same project. They're 2 buildings side by side, but it's the same project. So do I have support for that? Okay, so I'm going to read all 4, and then I believe Mr. Klooster is here to talk to us about this. So, Jenna, let me read these first, and then I'll turn it over to you. So these hearings, it's a public hearing to consider the establishment of an obsolete property rehabilitation district pursuant to PA 146 of 2000 for Scott and Associates LLC at 1032 Franklin Street Southeast. We also have a public hearing to consider an application for a 10-year obsolete property rehabilitation exemption certificate. So one's setting the district, one is for the certificate. Again, this is pursuant to Public Act 146 of 2000 for Scott and Associates at 1032 Franklin Street Southeast. Public hearing to consider the establishment of an obsolete property rehabilitation district pursuant to PA 146 of 2000 for Scott and Associates LLC at 1040 Franklin Street Southeast. And then a public hearing to consider an application for a 10-year obsolete property rehabilitation exemption certificate pursuant to PA 146 of 2000 for Scott and Associates LLC at 1040 Franklin Street Southeast. So all of these public hearings that are related to this project, again, setting the district and the certificate, were made, all of the notices were made pursuant to state law. So tonight, what we'll do is we'll start off with our city staff person from our Economic Development Department, Mr. Kluster, giving us some background on this project. And then we'll invite up the individuals who are working on this project if they want to add anything tonight. And we'll give my colleagues up here an opportunity to ask questions, and then we'll open it up for public comment. So if you're here specifically to be heard on this item, I'll give you an opportunity to be heard momentarily. All right, so Mr. Kluster.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. I'm surprised you didn't want to take all four of those separately, but appreciate that. So I'm here tonight to give you an overview of the project at 1032 and 1040 Franklin. Two OPRA applications, as you mentioned. As a reminder, the OPRA Obsolete Property Rehabilitation Incentive is an incentive that provides for a temporary reduction in the increase in taxes resulting from the investment in the project. So this is two buildings that are actually connected to each other, located at Franklin and Neeland on the southeast side of Grand Rapids. The property qualifies, or the project qualifies, because the buildings have been determined to be functionally obsolete by the city assessor, and there is a minimum threshold requirement that is met by the $175,000 investment proposed in this project. So Scott and Associates plans to rehabilitate the buildings for commercial use, including ground floor commercial use, and upstairs there will be 3 apartments, 2 two-bedroom apartments and 1 one-bedroom apartment with estimated rents at $900 to $1,000 a month. This project has been reviewed by the Southtown Corridor Improvement Authority, as the property is located in that district, and it was also reviewed by the Economic Development Project team. So I'm going to invite Earl Scott up here, representing Scott and Associates, to give you a little bit more information about his project.
Welcome, Mr. Scott. Good to see you again. I should remind my colleagues that Mr. Scott was before us at the Economic Development Project team, so those of us who serve on that committee had the opportunity to hear about this project.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Thank you so much, Mayor Blist and the Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight to discuss this project. This project is very important to me, as I have a passion for the community. I was born and raised in Grand Rapids and lived in this community for practically all my life, so it means a lot. When this opportunity came to us, we initially reached out to a structural engineer who went through it and said, hey, it's a good building. It's worth the investment. At that point, then we reached out to the community. We talked to people in the community. We also met with Baxter Neighborhood Association, along with Southtown, SID as well, and we have their full support to move forward with this project. What we're hoping to do at this point is to solicit your support as well, so that we might continue with this project.
Sir, I'm sorry, can I just pause you for a minute? Can I ask, if you're going to chat, can you just go, you're welcome to keep talking out in the hall, but I want to make sure that we respect his opportunity to be heard. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So again, we're very passionate about it. It's an opportunity to take a building that had been vacant for over 10 years and had fallen into decay. So the opportunity to come in and do a extreme makeover is something that we're excited about, and hopefully that this will spur other economic development in the area and provide jobs for the residents in the community as well. So.
And commissioners, we asked a lot about kind of what you envision going in this space, and then also at Economic Development Project team, if I remember right, we specifically asked about parking. Do you want to elaborate on those 2 items?
Okay. What we've done, we've put fillers out in the community and asked the residents what they would like to see in the area. We've gotten quite a response, a wide range of activities. We are determined to put something that's going to be positive and a plus for the community. So we haven't made any selections at this point for possible tenants, but it is under consideration.
And if I remember, is there is there housing above, and then it's behind, am I remembering correctly, there's parking behind?
Yes, there's parking behind
thanks.
as well.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks.
Great.
Commissioners, any questions? Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Scott, for your summary and for being here, all of you, this evening to share this plan. I know when this project was brought before the Southtown Corridor Improvement District, we were happy to hear that something positive was being done with this building and keeping the character of the building. So if you've driven past it before, this rendering does
justice for how the building could be renewed and brought back to life. So thank you for that, and thank you for being a part of the community and actually spending time making sure that consulting with residents was important and a high value for you. And those of you and the members of your team who live right there in the neighborhood. So thank you for that, and thank you, Mr. Klusterman, for bringing him before the commission. Thank you.
I'd like to add my sincere appreciation for the Economic Development Department. Mr. Kluster in general has been very supportive and helpful in us moving forward with this as well. And so, again, thank you again for your support.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, and thank you for being here tonight. So if you want to, you can sit tight, and if there are specific questions that come up during public comment, I might have you come back up to answer those. So if you are here tonight to be heard on these requests, this is very specific to this project, you're welcome to come forward and provide your input and feedback. Hi, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mayor Bliss, and the entire commission. I rise in support of my friend, brother. I've known Earl since we were little kids, and he said he had the support of the Baxter Neighborhood Association, which is rather apropos because that's where I actually met Earl, at the Baxter Community Center. We played basketball against each other. Sigsbee Jets and Henry.
I'm sorry, sir.
I'm sorry, Donnie Comer.
Thank you.
I apologize. In Grand Rapids.
Thank you.
So I'm here not only in support for myself, but we also have classmates that we graduated from high school with and elementary school with. And beyond that, I got texts from people, our friends and classmates from California and Atlanta and all over the country, just to show the support that this man is doing, because we all grew up in this neighborhood and we all knew what that business is on Franklin and Eastern we grew up with, and there was hardware stores and banks and grocery stores and a number of businesses. So to see him come back and put his money and put his time and his effort into this, we're very proud of him, and we just want you to know that we support him fully. And we hope that when it opens, all of you will be there for that grand opening as well. Thank you.
Can you give us your name one more time?
Donnie, D-O-N-N-I-E, Comer, C-O-M-E-R.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I see some people smiling in the back. I'm assuming that they're in support. Hi, welcome.
Hi, my name is LaDonna Norman. I'm here to discuss the Obsolete Property Rehabilitation Center, Rehabilitation District at 1040 Franklin and 1032 Franklin. Both of these buildings sold for $25,000 each on February 1st, 2018. The developer is looking to get a 10-year tax exemption. That would average $2,732 a year in savings for the developer, and in 10 years' time, that would average $360,000. A one-bedroom apartment for $900 is 650 square feet, and two-bedroom apartment, $1,000 a month, 1,000 square feet. My position is we're just adding fuel to the fire. We still haven't figured out the housing crisis in Grand Rapids, and we continue to just throw stuff in here. I would love to know who owned this building prior to February 2018. And when you talk about Baxter Community Center, and I get a little confused about who represents us and who speaks for us, because I live in that area and I had no knowledge of this, but I've seen them working on this building since last year. And so I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no, because $900 for 650 square feet is not, it's just, this is happening everywhere. People cannot afford this rent. And I understand that these gentlemen are from here, but they're established. Everybody doesn't have that same establishment as these gentlemen. And so my concern is when we rehabilitate these areas, what does it mean for the existing residents? What it means is taxes go up. It means more displacement. It means more city calls, and I'm just like, let's look at it deeper. Who actually benefits from this? Is it the developer or the community? And that's all.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Norman. Anyone else who wishes to be heard on this item?
Watchdog Miller back. Your Uncle Tom too, Franklin, has run Franklin Street.
Mr. Miller, stop.
Stop for what? Louder?
Mr.
Stop being a racist.
Mr. Miller, I'm going to ask you to sit down.
Why?
Because I have talked to you so many times about appropriate and inappropriate things to say during public comment. It's derogatory. Mr. Miller, it's derogatory. Mr. Miller, you know this. Mr. Miller, you know how to be respectful. I'm asking you, your time is up. Your time is up. Your time, Mr. Miller, your time is up. It is up. It is up. Stop. Mr. Miller, stop it. Stop. Your time is up. Stop. You need to be respectful. Mr. Miller, stop it. Mr. Miller, enough. Your time's up. Mr. Miller. All right, anyone else who wishes to be heard on this item? Okay, I'm closing this public comment. Do not yell from the floor. And this will be referred back to Committee of the Whole. All right, and now I will turn to our public comment period. So this is an opportunity to speak about any other item that is not on the agenda or is not part of a scheduled public hearing. And we'll start right here with you, sir. Welcome.
Hi, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Greg Preston. And one of the things that I'm very concerned about, I've lived in the northeast side of Grand Rapids since 1953. We have a homeless problem there, which everybody's aware of. But when I called Commissioner Jones' office and asked him, well, why did the taxpayers build the bus shelters? His secretary or whoever says, well, I don't know. Why are you asking me? I have pictures. The homeless people have taken over that bus shelter 2 times in the last year. I've had to pick up my niece from that bus shelter because in the wintertime, she had to stand outside or put up with the stink inside. There's anywhere from 5 to 7 or more people every day in that bus shelter. The police don't do anything about it. The rapid bus company don't want to do anything about it. I say it's time for the city of Grand Rapids to take a stand and stop these people. Get like Kalamazoo. They're getting ready to make them register. Maybe that's what we need to do. These people are making more money on the streets than we make in a week, yet they pay no taxes. I feel it's time to make these people accountable for their actions and make them like any other citizen of the greater Grand Rapids area. This is ridiculous, and this is the worst corner of all, is right down there at Michigan and Fuller. And I'm sure many of you have drove by there and seen it full of homeless people and all their garbage, and they're drinking their beers. But nobody does anything about it. I had the police out there 3 times last year. And you know what they told me about the guys that were drinking in there? If I don't see them, there's nothing I can do about it. Well, they got a can inside a paper bag. What's stopping you from looking inside that paper bag? I mean, this has got to stop. And I'm not going to be quiet until it does stop. And Mayor Bliss, you know me from when you were a commissioner.
Yes, I do. I remember you well.
And I have a lot of respect for you, and I have a lot of respect for the commission. But we need to take some action, and the action needs to happen now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Preston. Good to see you. All right, others who wish to be heard?
Hi, my name is LaDonna, and first I want to show you about the MOK, the Quality Improvement Study. And this was mailed May 21st. It was in the mailbox on the 22nd and delivered. This event was on the 23rd, so I want to show you this. That is not an appropriate way to have community engagement. Like I literally had 3 hours to figure out if I could go to that meeting. They sent the postcards out, and then on the very day this event happened, it was certain people who already knew about the event, but if you want the participation of the whole community, I think it's important to make sure we have sufficient time to plan out and see if that's something we could do. I want you to know that there are no cameras, there is no home for alls, There aren't no line of peoples, and I'm still here speaking for housing. I think that we need to work on putting a cap on the rent. I think it's ridiculous when we talk about having any apartment, 1 bedroom, 650 square feet. We will be living like we're in New York or Chicago in the next 5 years. And I understand how we got that way. See, the city plans 20 years at a time, but where I'm from, we only plan for the weekend. And so I'm working on how to relay that back to my community. But what we need right now is we need a cap on these rent prices, because right now, as of July 1st, I'm going to be relocated again. I was blackballed out of Grand Rapids for my advocacy in housing, and no one will rent to me. There's no reason why they shouldn't. I have the income, but I'm blackballed out of Grand Rapids, and someone from the city made sure that happened. And I have children. How do I tell I've been homeless, but I've never been in a shelter. But how do I tell my kids, I can't afford to house you and feed you and give you all these great things to make you self-sufficient in life? It's really hard. It seems like this is my routine, and I should be used to it. But no one gets used to this kind of pain, moving and relocating. I don't even put anything on the walls anymore, because I'm like, the rent's gonna go up or something's gonna happen where we're gonna have to relocate. I'm asking you right now to go back to the drawing table, go out to the neighborhood, find out how some of these rents are, and let's cap some of these rents. It is ridiculous, and it's even more ridiculous for families that are working. I want people to know that everybody that gets some kind of assistance isn't lazy and unemployed. Like, we're good people, we work, we want the same things, we just don't have the support system. And I'll see you again next city meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Norman. Good feedback about the MLK event. Thanks.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Commission. I didn't speak last time, and I'm a little bit late tonight, so I didn't get to speak on cell towers. But this morning I rode across the 6th Street Bridge, and one of those people that are disrespectful had the gall to take a glass bottle that had juice in it, throw it against the girders, and break that glass all over the sidewalk. This is disrespect. And it's a subject that I've voiced on before. Another thing that's come to my attention recently is the way the City Appeals Board handled the case of this man that set fires in Butterworth Hospital. I think the police department could have gone a little further with that man, because he had committed a serious crime of arson of an occupied building. He should have been charged, and the prosecutor should have taken care of it. So I'm unhappy with the appeals board for not taking into consideration that many people were endangered by this man, and they will continue to be endangered with him because he's on the streets. And he hasn't been taken care of properly, to my knowledge. And on the cell towers, it comes to the fact that I was in the military between 1959 and 1962. From March of 1960 to February of 62, I was assigned to a nuclear weapons company. I was around the nuclear weapons, and we were very well trained at that time, the dangers of radiation. That still exists today. And I think that the state legislature has forsaken their duties to the general public by not handling the situation in the proper way. And I'm hoping that the City Commission will continue to get after the legislature and our state government to do the right thing for the people. That business has to take into consideration that they could harm a lot of people with the radiation. I know from experience and from education on radiation that that could happen. I continue to work on my project of cleaning up the city, cleaning up the trash, and that. And I hope that I can proceed a little faster. I've approached a number of the different groups. I would like to also approach all of the neighborhood associations and ask them to create either a block assignment or a time where people come out and clean up the area in their own district, whether the neighborhood association. So that is the way it should be. I do support our police department, and our parents have to learn to teach their kids respect. Because if they aren't respectful as children, they will be disrespectful as adults, and we see it every day here in Grand Rapids of disrespectful people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Davis. Hi, welcome.
Okay, so last time that we were here,
Oh, can you start with your name, sir, and the city you live in?
Joshua Shade, live in Grand Rapids. And last time we were here, Mr. Washington, the city manager, had a question for the audience at the end. And the question was, where does this us versus them mentality come from? There was a lot of discussion about police funding and how the sheriff works with ICE and whether or not we deport illegal immigrants. And this notion of us versus them came up. And I think I want to explain who I think us is and who I think them is. Us is just about everybody in this room, specifically everyone on this commission and at least me. Law-abiding citizens who pay their taxes. That's us. And them are the people who are criminal and are not legal citizens. That is the them portion of this equation. And that is not to say, please do not confuse, that is not to say that if you are an illegal alien, that you are somehow a violent criminal. That is not the case at all. But it is to say that if you are an illegal alien, you do not pay taxes, typically. That is one of the things that illegal aliens have the luxury of, that citizens do not. And so one of the ways that I think this council sows division and creates this us versus them mentality is by not funding things like the police, because law-abiding citizens tend to like the police and criminals tend to not like the police so much, or so I've been told. We spend money on making sure that we are going to be spending money on making sure that the census question, that we reach hard-to-reach communities for the census question, and that is specifically targeting non-citizens. So we are going to be spending, I thought it was something in the hundreds of thousands of dollar range in reaching non-legal people in Grand Rapids for the census question. And that creates an us versus them mentality, because we are spending money on people who are not taxpayers. We also create an us versus them mentality by not working with ICE to deport criminal illegal aliens, people who have already convicted and shouldn't be here in the first place. This is the way that an us versus them mentality, it isn't along racial lines or ethnic lines or cultural lines. It is along the lines of criminal non-taxpayer versus citizen taxpayer. And when you fail repeatedly, what I perceive to be a failure repeatedly, to fund the police and to make sure that we prioritize people who live here and pay taxes, you create that division. Thank you.
Hi, welcome.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Hi, I'm Misty Eves. I am from the West Michigan Cannabis Guild. I am here today, just thank you for receiving our letter and filing it. I just want to go on public record and for other people's knowledge. We came to you with expressed serious concerns over the current pool of applicants that have been accepted into the lottery for the MNFLA license in Grand Rapids and who will begin to appearing before you in the Grand Rapids Planning Commission. Members of the West Michigan Cannabis Guild discussed a Grand Rapids ordinance, application, and lottery at our May membership meeting. Overall, the membership is extremely disappointed with the exclusion of more local applicants and expressed a variety of concerns with the applicants that were accepted into the lottery. Our first concern regarding the lack of applications that have a majority or ownerships from the Grand Rapids residents. While we appreciate the extensive discussions that took place prior to voting on the ordinance, and while we appreciate the intention of the MyVeda scoring system, the applicant pool moving forward with the Planning Commission does not fit the populations of the citizen in Grand Rapids, the members of the West Michigan Cannabis Guild, and the Planning Commission and the City Commission stated that they wanted. It's unclear how many City Grand Rapids verified the 8 MyVeda points, and some applicants, rumors of the local residents being offered of accepting a one-time payment for exchange of stating 8.5% of the business. We're just asking that the city would formally verify that that the business people have 25% of that and that they are getting 25% of the profits. Another great concern is the $300,000 capital requirement. Members were not aware that the entity could go to multiple projects. We would like the city, we believe that violates the state process as well, state law. So we are asking that separate capital amount for every project application. A great deal of concern was expressed at the neighborhood plan, lack of community meetings and community input opportunities by some applicants. While applicants did do their due diligence, many good faith efforts to reach out to the communities, others did not. The pre-qualification requirements knocked most of West Michigan Guild members out of the running for a spot in the lottery. The MMFLA board was disbanded in March for a variety of reasons, including allegations of corruption and inconsistency. Laura has stated that there is a very large backlog of the applications from 2018 due to the slow pace of the MMFLA board in taking up applications for pre-qualifications and licenses. The Guild members would just like to we found it was unfair that some that could do due diligence didn't and were pre-qualified, and the ones that couldn't have anything to do with the Laura back plan, it was out of our control. We also expressed that the Grand Rapids has been most harmed by the prohibition and the war on drugs. We want them to be represented fairly, and we would like the city to take steps in including them with associated real estate application fees, capital requirements, etc. We also believe in working harder on expungement. Thank you so much.
Appreciate that. Hi, welcome.
Thank you. How you doing? My name is DeAndre Jones. First of all, I'd like to say to Chief David Kittle, actually like Chief David Kittle, I just completed 3 of the 4 classes for the Our Cities Academy, and actually being able to see him and sit him in a room for a little bit more, you get a feel of the people. I believe I believe he's a great guy. I believe with his credentials and everything that he's done, that he deserves a little bit more respect than people give him. That's my personal opinion. Also, I'd like to talk about the cannabis thing. I'm very passionate about cannabis. My house has been raided for it. I have scars on my eyes and everything for it. I just like to say that I know that I'm not one of those people that have all of the money to actually do the cannabis thing. I am one of those entrepreneurs. I would say I'm a master builder. I could literally take something, give me anything or an idea, and I can build it from the ground up because I'm going to put all of my energy into it. Now, I know that I'm not from Grand Rapids. I was born in Chicago, but I've been here most of my life. And so I do feel for those people here in Grand Rapids that put their money into it, whatever they did to be able to try to get into the cannabis thing and weren't able to get that. I just personally feel that with all of the people that's come here with the big money and everything else, that if we really want Grand Rapids to be like have that local celebrity or have big people come, I believe we should give opportunities for people that are here to actually show what they can do instead of just taking those people because they have the big money. I don't know who's, but I'm just saying from my own, not from my personal interest, but just because I feel for people, because I've been around a lot of people. I've literally been to every medical cannabis meeting there is. I've been to the University of Michigan. I just want to say that I recently went to Frederick Township, and I actually am about to acquire 14 acres of land, and I want to build pharmaceutical grade cannabis myself. And I'm very serious about this. And Frederick Township is trying to get a hold of the DNR and trying to acquire 500 acres of land to build 200 apartments. And hopefully I can be able to get a part of that, and so I can help with economic development, maybe be like a young black Jay Van Andel or Rich DeVos. I'm serious. I've already told y'all that you can create an asteroid mining company, which is where humanity's first trillionaire will be. So I don't doubt myself for any of that. I just want to say that also I'm working very tirelessly on the basketball thing. So eventually I want to get into legislation or politics because I just don't want to be mixing things up. But being able to properly go about things the proper way, I just feel like we should have more hometown heroes here. I know this is my hometown, but I love the city of Grand Rapids. I love the people here. I get a lot of stuff for the stuff that I do, but it takes those people that are willing to go forward and don't care what anybody has to say in order to make the changes, and I believe you have to be the change you want to see in the world. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, DeAndre. Thanks, Don.
Good evening, Commissioners. I need these now. My name is Don Lee. I'm a lifelong resident of Grand Rapids. Pretty sure all of you know me. I'm here representing the Grand Rapids Democracy Initiative and our Ward Redistricting Committee. Every day in Grand Rapids, representation is reduced as the city population grows and per capita citizens per commissioner increases. I appreciate the individual conversations that you've all had with our committee members, and I appreciate the acknowledgement of the difficulties of being responsive to residents when each ward covers almost 70,000 people, which is comparable to the representation of your state representative. Your input's been insightful, informative, and important to us in ensuring that we are hearing all concerns from all stakeholders. We're holding a press conference on June 18th to introduce our signature drive to ask voters if they prefer to abandon a 100-year-old system of governance that, excuse me, as all of you know, was intentionally implemented to diminish resident voice in favor of wage control, in favor of a system of government that elevates resident leaders who are committed to tell the stories of their communities and ensure the issues of lead, healthcare, education, wages, violence, police relations, and housing are addressed. As I said, I'm very grateful for all of your service. I hope that with considering, this is probably the shortest I've ever spoken to this group, considering the things that we've heard about the equity involved in the marijuana and the implementation of the 5G systems, that you all will take it upon yourselves to fight as hard as you can for our residents. And as I've also in the past emailed or mailed you a letter regarding the expungement of marijuana convictions and the uplifting of those who have been most impacted by the drug war in the city, I'll hope that we can figure out a way to ensure that our local residents enjoy the benefits of this new industry of marijuana that's definitely upon us at this point. So thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Good evening. My name is Christine Helms-Maletic. I am a resident of the city of Grand Rapids, and I've been working with Don Lee and others on the ward redistricting initiative. And so since I started working with this group, I've learned a lot about the history of the city of Grand Rapids and about the events of 100 years ago that brought us the system of city government representation that we have today. And so I'm here to suggest to you and to our listening public and people who are here tonight that a lot has changed in 100 years. As Don mentioned, the city population has grown. It's difficult to be a representative, one representative, two representatives of 70,000 people. I believe that it's time for us to look at whether or not our system of government needs to change along with the times. And so the more I think about this question, the more I think the question that we should be asking ourselves is, are we in favor of maintaining consolidated power that was put in place by the bosses of 1916? Or do we trust the voters to determine the appropriate level of representation for themselves in a ballot question? So that's the question I've been asking myself. I'm pretty clear on what I think is important and what I think we should do next. And that I guess I would just sort of leave you with this. Given that the seeds of this question were planted in the failed furniture strike of 1911, it seems appropriate to quote the old unionizing song, "Which side are you on?" Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Christine. Hi, welcome.
Yeah, I'm Pat Seisig again. I'll try and do it right. And I am here. I agree with Mr. Davis about this deal with this terrorist act that was committed on Butterworth Hospital. I think of all the people that could have died in that act. I have no idea what he was doing there. I have no idea. Nobody's told us how he ever got where he got. And what our police did was, according to law, they did the right thing. They were protecting every single one of us. Why is this man out on the street and our law officers are being punished because of his criminal act? This is ridiculous. I want you to stand behind our great police officers. They do a great job. I trust them completely. I have not ever had a bad problem with them at all. They are very understanding, very caring, and the abuse they are taking from these dirty, filthy criminals.
Ma'am, please be mindful about making derogatory comments, please.
They are spit on, they are kicked, they are bitten, they are hit, they are thrown on the ground, they are attacked by many. One officer was attacked by 4. What happened to them? Where are they? Are they in prison for their act? Or is that officer still suffering from what happened? This needs to stop. They are our defense. They are the ones we trust. And I want that person that did that terror act, I want him punished. I want him locked up or something where he can never do this act again. And I would like to know what procedures, how he got in the hospital and how he got up to that helipad. I want to have a full disclosure, and I want our officers honored for the protection they gave us. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else wishes to be heard? All right, I'm going to close this public comment period. I'm going to turn to my colleagues, and I'll start down here with Commissioner Repart.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. First, I just want to thank GRPS for hosting us again, and give a little shout out to a former Westsider, Ron Gorman, our newly appointed interim superintendent. So I'm grateful for him for stepping up into that role. I want to thank my colleagues too and the advocates who came tonight, who demonstrated some dialogue about a very difficult topic for us all. I learned something new from this group up here every single week that we spend time together. And then lastly, I just want to make note, we unveiled the Laker line this week, coming through the west side, down Fulton Street all the way to Allendale, cross county, across from Grand Rapids to Walker. But also that means lots of construction. And so I just wanted to remind people there are these construction meetings that happen. I attended one about my own street, and the plan was actually adjusted, even though it was a small way. Based on that feedback, our staff does a great job listening to people. So please show up to those meetings so you can speak into what's happening on the streets right by your house, and also bear with us as we build our city out for what's next.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight too, and thank Dale Berry, wherever he is, for welcoming us here. As you heard tonight, you heard the best of democracy and debate. It's really a difficult situation. I really want to thank staff too for all that you have done and tried to do to address this very tricky situation. I wish we knew more, and I hope that going forward the state will listen to us and that we can begin to push back a little bit against some of these preemptive laws that we've been seeing passed over the last decade. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lanier?
Yes, thanks for coming out this evening and sharing your public comment. We appreciate those, and have a good night.
Thanks. Commissioner O'Connor? Commissioner Jones?
Thanks to all who came out. Welcome to the second ward, and thanks to GRPS for being great hosts. Also want to thank Mr. Scott and the Scott family for your potential investment over there in Franklin, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. I want to also thank staff for being here tonight, those who are providing information out in the foyer. Appreciate all the departments that are represented tonight. Also want to remind the community of the announcement earlier today of our 3 finalists for police chief, and invite the public to come out next Thursday to meet the candidates 6:30 to 8:30 at Cesar Chavez Elementary School, and provide your feedback. You can also go online if you go to our website and provide feedback in advance. I do want to highlight one of the actions the commission took earlier today for the public. Kind of went fast. I wasn't aware that there was going to be that kind of discussion with the item coming out of the Community Development Committee, but we need to double back as staff and make sure we understand the implications of the vote for tonight, because as I understand it, we have some 100 permits in process, and so we need to understand how those applications will be evaluated, adjudicated in light of what the vote was tonight. And we'll be working with external counsel, internal counsel, and as you noted, it was 3-3, and if we determine that there is more legal risk than we were aware of, with Commissioner Moody back next Tuesday, I may have to put the item back on the agenda for consideration, but we will be evaluating that and letting the commission know. I wish we would have paused a little bit and maybe had a closed session to discuss some of these legal issues before the vote.
Thank you, City Manager. All right, and with that, we're adjourned. Drive safe.